Welcome to East Idaho Newsmakers. Today we are talking with two officials with the city of Idaho Falls about some upcoming projects that you've probably heard about and other things that are underway. We have Chris Fredericksen, he is the Public Works Director, and Dave Richards, he is the Water Superintendent for the city. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming in to speak with us. Let's start off with the water tower. Dave, it's a historical landmark that was announced just a few weeks ago. It's coming down. Explain why this change is happening.
Well, first and foremost, the city's been growing for a significant amount of time since 1937 when the tower was first built. We're looking to expand the water tower in size, doubling the capacity of it with the new tower. On top of that, the existing water tower, obviously due to its age, is experiencing some difficulties as far as the paint is beginning to peel off, and it has a lot of other items, I guess, that would need to be corrected on it. And due to the expense of those items and our background in looking at it, it made more sense for us to build a new tower and remove the old one rather than try and rehab the old one.
Will the new one be built where the old one is standing?
Yes, the new one has to be built to keep water pressure throughout the system. And so the new tower, once it's put into operation, will maintain water pressure in the system so that we can then drain the old one and begin dismantling it. But the new tower does have to, so we had to pick a new location, if you will, for the new tower.
And where will that be?
We've shortlisted 3 locations in downtown. One's South Capitol Park, kind of south of the Museum of Idaho, or not the Museum of Idaho, the Art Museum. Second location's in a parking lot kind of between the Idaho Falls Public Library and the State of Idaho building. And the third one's in another small parking lot between the State of Idaho building and the Willow Tree Gallery.
So you'll be constructing that one. Once that one's up, then you kind of shift the operation from the old one to the new one, and then you can take down the old one.
Yeah, that's correct.
Could the old one just stay up as a historical, let's go get my photo taken by it, and not be used?
There's always that possibility. The problem with it is, again, the items, it needs lots of repair work to keep it up and to keep it looking nice. And to the tune, estimations are looking probably between $2 to $2.5 million. And that's a lot of money to throw at something that no longer has a use for the city other than a point to look at.
Yeah. Well, and one thing I'd like to add to that, you know, we've been looking into this for quite some time just to evaluate what the potential best moves would be for the city in this water tower. And one of the reasons that we have a fairly long lead schedule as we've came out and chatted with people about it is recognizing, you know, this water tower has been in Idaho Falls skyline for, 8 decades and more. And so we do want to have that opportunity for the public to come comment about the proposed new locations, at least that we've identified at this point. We have a lot of things that we can look at as far as how that new tower would look. But there is no question that the water tower is probably the most integral piece of our water system as far as supplying water to our existing residents and also as the city continues to grow. So this is not something that we're trying to do very quickly in an abbreviated schedule. I believe our intent really would be to have public comment covered over this next year, so a full year to hear from the public about what their thoughts are, work through those issues, and then hopefully go through the design process in a new site to begin construction sometime in 2022. And so really the idea is we have some time to deal with these issues. We don't want to spring it on the public. We do want to make a good decision going forward. You know, we're somewhat unique in other communities, from other communities rather, in that Idaho Falls is generally pretty flat. I mean, we do have some elevation changes, but not like a lot of communities. And because of that, this particular water tower sits in really the centroid of our city, even after these 80 years that it's been standing up there. So the idea to put that back in a location close to where it's at is a crucial part of the system. And the other piece of that is the water tower is actually fed from our well number 3. And so that well will continue to feed the new tower. And so with those two pieces, we need to be close to the well, and it's actually fairly close to the centroid of the city. That really kind of dictates an area that we've identified where their potential relocation sites could be for the new tower.
I heard the other day, and I don't know if you two would be the people to talk about this. Are you over sewage?
Yeah.
Sewer treatment? Okay, so Somebody was saying that those flushable wipes that you purchase at the grocery store that say they're flushable really might not be so flushable, and it can create issues with the sewage plant. Is that a concern that the city has?
Not just in Idaho Falls, but nationwide. That's become an issue. It's one of those things a lot of people kind of, get red in the face to talk about, but we'd be happy to have an entire segment if we'd like. We can travel down to the treatment plant and look.
Oh, we can do a show and tell.
Yeah, we can get the cameras down there and go take a look at that. We do tours at the treatment plant, but those are items that we deal with on a daily basis as we continue to maintain our sewer system.
So the water tower, you've got several years to get your photos taken. You don't have to, it's not going to be torn down tomorrow. And it sounds like you can give some input if you're interested in this issue and let the city know where you think the new one should go and the process of what should happen. Let's talk about summer road construction projects. The cones are out. There's been some lane restrictions here and there. What's kind of the main project that the city's hoping to accomplish this summer?
We have quite a few projects that we'll be going out to. The one that comes to mind as you think about key impacts within the city is, I'm going to have to blame Dave again. We have a water line replacement in First Street that really will extend from the Idaho Canal, close to, say, where Winco is, to Lomax as you travel to the east. The reason that's a big impact is because of all the underground construction. We actually need to close that particular roadway for about 50 days to complete that. So as part of that, we'll be replacing the existing water line that I think is some 70 years old. We'll be putting in a new storm system as well, and then we'll be reconstructing the roadway. But because of that, we wanted to start that after school's out, so sometime in June. But that 50-day closure, that'll be a fairly extensive detour that we'll have. But other than that, I think this is a good opportunity as we look at some of the other projects that we have. We've stood up a new construction website where we actually have mapping that shows all of the projects intended for construction in this summer. So we'd like to encourage people to go out there and take a look at that. Our GIS section just recently completed that, has all the background information associated with it. Contact folks if they have questions about it. But I think as far as major impacts to the public, that First Street project is probably going to be our large project of the year.
And then it looks like there's a few minor projects underway on 17th Street. Have you finished the turn lane situation? On 17th Street, there was some turn lanes added with so you can't flip a U-turn on 17th. Has that project been finished up?
It actually has. So those medians actually are installed to prohibit some of those left turning movements. That came about as some long-standing goals and studies that we actually had to improve safety along 17th Street. I suppose it's somewhat obvious where we have the most vehicles, we also have the most accidents. And because of that, we identified through some stakeholder groups as they toured those facilities and looked at accident data and other geometrics with recommendations to how can we improve safety on 17th Street. The traffic's there, that's not ever going to go away. But we do need to make that as safe as possible for the traveling public. And so those were installed and have functioned fairly well for their intended purpose. It is somewhat of a change for the traveling public as they go through that, as you encounter that. However, your trips, that you have a specific way that you like to get to a specific area. So some of those change, but we do feel like that's something that's going to benefit in the long term. And in the end, those decisions are really made to make sure that you have the opportunity to get home safely with your family at night. That's our goal in the end, is to make sure we have efficient travel and everybody stays safe.
Sure. Dave, what is the water situation like in Idaho Falls? Are we in a good situation? Do we have enough water here? Are the winters providing enough snow for us?
Yes, we've had a couple of really good winters. This last 2 winters have been phenomenal for us as far as creating a large snowpack that drains down over the course of the summertime, which allows us to keep our reservoirs full. And the reservoirs full help supply the irrigation water that's required because, southeast Idaho is still largely ag production. And that water helps them out, which helps cities out as well, because then there's not so much of a battle between who's got priority over the current water that we've got. The city of Idaho Falls is actually in a really good situation for water rights, for our groundwater rights. So we have enough water rights to keep them growth going throughout the city, and it's just a matter of identifying projects in the future, which we created back in 2015 a facility plan for the water division, and it kind of stripped the water division apart and looked at all the aspects of it, and then put it back together, identified growth and how to address it, identified projects that we needed to accomplish to accommodate the growth of the city, and funding mechanisms, I guess, to get us there.
Has there been any update on the water meter discussion? I think all the new homes they have to have water meters, don't they? Or at least a port to put in a meter?
Yes, a pit, a meter box, if you will, for a meter to go into. That was a requirement established by the state back in about, I think, 2006, 2007 timeframe. So all new construction requires a spot to put a water meter. We do now require all new commercial construction to install water meters. But residential, that hasn't been broached yet.
Okay.
You know, there are some interesting things as you brought up, and as far as in eastern Idaho and the Snake River Plain, there's been a lot of discussion about trying to mitigate for our water usage. We have had some agreements as a number of communities and municipalities have came together and recognized that we need to take care of our aquifer that we have. It's a tremendous resource. And so this year, we're actually beginning the first of we have a 35-year agreement for all of those communities to come together and continue to try to mitigate the water that they pump through putting a portion of that back into the ground in groundwater recharge. And so I think it's a tremendous step forward as we protect our future ability to continue to supply water for eastern Idaho communities. As another item about that with meters, it's been talked about quite a bit in the fact that Idaho Falls is one of the largest communities out there in Idaho that remains unmetered. And there's kind of two sides to that story, if you will. We've provided a tremendous benefit to our community at a very low cost for all the water that they can utilize. But we do recognize through conservation efforts and eventually perhaps that discussion about whether meters should be installed, that water is becoming a more and more valuable resource, and we need to be able to take necessary steps to educate the public about that and look at ways that we can conserve the water usage throughout all of our communities in eastern Idaho.
Yeah. Long term, 5-10 years, what are some of the major projects on the horizon for the city?
Well, we have some pretty large projects, transportation related, I would say in the next 2 to 3 years. One of the major pushes that we have is to redevelop the Woodruff and 17th Street intersection with a lane configuration similar to what 17th and Hitt has now, so dual lefts and some right turn bays. We're working through some of the environmental issues and looking at the right-of-way impacts at this point, so that design is active and ongoing. We'll also be looking at some major improvements at our wastewater treatment plant facility, some dewatering aspects that will help us become more efficient in how we do some land application of the final end product from our treatment processes out there, so we're excited about that. We also have a project at the wastewater treatment plant facility in the near future that we'd like to stand up and utilize more of the methane gas that's produced out there so we can produce our own power. So some pretty exciting projects, I suppose. We'd be happy to take you on a tour out there, as we mentioned, and go through the plant. We've invested a lot of money in the plant over the last decade or so. So the facility has been modernized and has been stood up really to meet our needs today and well into the future as well.
I don't know if the growth will slow down, so all of those things are probably needed.
Well, I think as we prepare for the upcoming construction year, as the weather comes and you see more of those orange cones and signs, we just encourage people to pay special attention to those. We're trying to make things as convenient as possible while still being able to do that work. But really, those signs are put up to protect the workers that are out there in the travelway, but also to ensure that you get home safely at night. So we'd just like to encourage people to pay attention to those signs, and hopefully we can all exercise a little bit of patience as we have some major construction projects that will be ongoing.
With our weather, you get about 3 days to finish every project every year, right?
Yeah, so we have construction and snow removal. That's the only 2 seasons that we have.
Pull out the bulldozer or the snowplow. Thank you very much, Dave and Chris, from the city of Idaho Falls. We'll throw up that website that you mentioned where you can keep track of all of the projects down below. You can click there and see what the road construction projects are. Also the link to the water tower information page. Yeah. And there'll be updates posted.
Yeah, in fact, on the city's homepage, there is a hot link to the water tower, and you can select that, and there's a presentation, a link on the water tower page to a presentation that was presented to council and for the public, so that they can get more information about the water tower.
Excellent. Thank you very much, and thank you for watching East Idaho Newsmakers. I'm Nate Eaton. Have a good week.